How do we know the what, the when, the where, and the how? Because our ancestors have passed down the information to us. And we are tasked with doing the same thing for those who come after us. We can't lose the essence. We can't lose the history or the her story, as some say. We can't lose it, and we won't lose it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. All right, now that is something I want to ask you for a help to see if we can resolve that, which is about our limitations. Because sometimes, like you already pointed out, we don't know that we are able to do a lot of things, that we are powerful, that we are able to tell our story, that our story is equally valid, that we too do have a point of view, that we don't always need to see it from other people's point of view, that in this universe, you two are the center of your universe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How do we realize those limitations? What effect does those limitations place on us when we don't know that we too can be the star of our movie? Because all of us, we are writing our own movie, but we need to be in it.
We need to
Let me
be in it.
understand
We need to play a
it.
central role. And I think that what you are doing is a very good place by giving others a voice who are brave enough to come and tell their stories. What it does is that to the less brave, it gives some kind of empowerment or some kind of roadmap to say that I could possibly do that. But even outside possibly an external source or a formal source, such as a podcast, I want to speak about the value of community, because in overcoming adversities, in continuing as human beings, community plays a significant role. In fact, I presume that you may have come across it in your research, and as you write that during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, it was found that individuals who had a community, whether a virtual community or a physical community, fared much, much better in terms of survival and in terms of mental health abilities. So I believe that our communities, starting with our families, our extended families, or local communities, can begin. Those of us who may have the awareness of the importance of telling the stories are now tasked with the responsibility of initiating that kind of safe environment where people are liberated to tell their stories. And in telling these stories, come to realize, but hey, my story is important. My voice needs to be heard. And as we do more of that, as we do more of the promotion of storytelling, as we encourage the embracing the total human being. So in my story, I am a mother, I am a divorcee, I am a writer, I am an offender management specialist, I am a counselor, I am an afraid girl. I am a girl who was impacted and a woman who was impacted by my own limitations. But out of that, I rise and I grow. And then my story needs to become that parachute for some other person or persons to help them to have a soft landing. So I think that to a large extent, it starts with those of us who are telling the stories in spite of the fear, telling the stories in spite of our concerns, telling the stories in spite of even feeling doubtful. What difference is my story going to make? Oh, you never know. Your story could be the beginning of something really awesome. We just never know. And we won't know if we don't tell the stories.
I think I will spend some time just reflecting on that because that is really powerful. Because how would the people know if we don't tell the story? Now, I used to say, I've said it a number of times here, that if we don't tell our story, we are shortchanging the universe.
We are.
We are cheating life. Because now, imagine a simple book that was written in 1910. This book is written by Napoleon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there were many other books that were written by at the time, no? But this particular book, Think and Grow Rich,
Think and Grow
is
Rich.
it has become a symbol that every person in the business world is reading.
Yes.
Now, because first of all, how do we even come to know of Napoleon Hill? It is through the book that he has written. Now imagine that he have never written that book. How could we know of him? His name, if he wasn't the only person that was living at the time
Right.
in 1910.
And I must say,
Please.
1910, and we're at 2023, 113 years later, the tenets, the principles of the story in that book, Think and Grow Rich, are still very relevant today. And as you said, we would not be benefiting, the business people would not be benefiting. If not only the business people, individuals who are not necessarily in business. At least I haven't read all of it, but I've started reading that book and I've seen the absolute value. So to say that when we tell our stories, when Napoleon Hill put that into print, he left a legacy that can never be erased. And he left something that would, you see, his story was just from one man, but that book has impacted millions of individuals. And that's what our stories have the capacity to do. It's one woman's story. It's one man's story. It's one man's inside. It's one woman's inside. But it has the capacity to impact and change millions, billions even of life. And so that is even why I'm working on my memoir right now, because my story needs to get fully out there.
Absolutely. We are waiting for it. It is important. Your
It is.
story is the center of your universe.
Yes,
It must be considered important.
it is.
And for all of the people that are listening to us, I just want to point it out to you that your story is equally important, irrespective of where you are, what is your age, what has been your experience, whatever you have done, it is important. And note, you are the only person who can tell that
That
story.
story.
Nobody is going to do it for you. And I think this is why it's even more valid.
Yes, yes. It's your authentic place. It's your authentic experience. It emanates from the very being, the inner parts of your being. And you said just now that regardless of your age, and that's something that I'd like to say to your viewers and your listeners, that one of the limitations that I find that we experience is this limitation of the boxes. So you're too old. You can't. You can't do that. You can't go out there. Yes, you can. I recently read of an 80-odd-year-old who is doing bungee jumping. That she started at 50. I think she was 55. That's her story. And that story is impacting others. She could have said, "Oh, I'm too old. I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to let anybody know." But it's out there in the public realm to inspire others. At my age, I am also looking at taking on. So I'm in my fifth decade, and there are some things that I'm doing now. For the first time in my life, I am consistently following the advice of my forefathers and taking my health very serious. And I feel it is just phenomenal and an awesome thing. So I can say to any 50-odd-year-old, hey, you're not too late to start this. That's a part of my story. I started it and I'm having wonderful results in my body, in my health. And so I want to say that sometimes the categories and the boxes that we are either placed in or that we take on and believe, the schemas that we're fed that we believe, can inhibit us from trying. So we don't try, so we don't have that part of our stories to tell, or can inhibit us from telling the stories at all. So not to be limited by age, by class, by color of our skin. I mean, there is just no limit. And when we begin doing, Find love at 60, 70, if that is your aim, if that is your goal to find love. Perhaps you don't want to, but tell others about how awesome it is to be single at 60 or 70 and how you maneuver and what you do. It's our story, and the stories must be told.